This is my life at age 50. Kids, if you ever watch this is your dad's life story. I was a cool daddy.
I remember yesterday, Yoram born in Petah Tikva. He's born almost 4.5 kilos, big boy, very sweet.
We grew up in Holon, which is south of Tel Aviv. Anilovich, מספר 9. בחולון, on the 3rd floor, and we shared a bedroom.
We grew up about 2-3 blocks from each other. We were like the closest cousin, not just in age. We used to play together. We used to do some social activity together. We were ordinary kids, you know. We were outdoors all the time, climbing trees, playing in our backyards, always running around, looking for the best things to do.
Loved ice creams, and I always would take a bite of his ice cream. And one day I shoved him down. He was sitting on the chair, and I pushed him. And there was a knife on the floor. So that was a lucky accident. And all that was because I wanted a bite of his ice cream. That's something we talk about until today, fighting about ice cream. And today we're fighting about other things.
I only remember happy childhoods with that. And hanging out a lot in his house, playing the guitars, and just really hang out, having a good time. But the one that I remember the most is how he always thinking about how to make money from a very young age.
He's a very quiet person, very nice person. He like always clean my car. After he's come from the school, always I have couple shekel inside the dashboard. He took it, he's happy. He can go enjoy it. He said, okay, this you go clean, how much you have, you can have it.
Chaz had small cars, and he was a car collector. Back then, he was age 6, 7. Yoram was, navigating the car on the grooves on the carpet, and he always said, when I grow up, that's scary, I will buy my mom a car and a house. And he did it.
Chaz, from a very young age, was an entrepreneur, let's put it this way. A lot of people know him as a successful entrepreneur. And it's not a rumor, it's true. He went to his father before the bar mitzvah and says, Dad, why am I wasting all the money on my bar mitzvah? Let me and I will invest it. And there you go. That's the whole thing, so you can sum it Chaz with his financial success.
So around age 12, I used to watch a lot of TV in Israel. And back then the shows that were popular were Kojak and Starsky and Hutch. And I was fascinated with America as far as tall building, fast cars, money. Everything looked so amazing and big, and I kept telling my parents that I wanted to come to America. And then when I turned 13, I tried to negotiate with my parents not to have a bar mitzvah and to give me the money of the bar mitzvah, which back then was about 40,000 liras, and to come to America with it. And my parents wouldn't listen to me, and I just kept nagging and nagging and nagging, that finally at age 14, my dad said, if you want to go to America that bad, you can go. And I got a student visa to come and study in America. And my parents left me here at age of 14, no money, $70 to be exact. For me, it was no money, a visa to study, and a ticket, one-way ticket to go back home. And back then, there was no emails, text messages, or anything like that. It was, if you wanted to speak to your parents, it cost $15 a minute, and based on the $70 that I had to begin with, that was out of the question. And the other option was just to write letters back home. Until today, I have a bag full of letters of writing back and forth to my parents, telling them what's going on with us.
That period of time that he was here by himself, I think he really struggled. He struggled mostly being by himself and in a strange country, strange customs.
I kept telling my parents in the letter everything is miserable, that I have no money, that I'm starving to death, that that I need money, and things are hard, and some of it you don't want to make it sound too difficult, but I had a hole in my shoe, and I had no money for shoes, and I used to walk on the heel of my foot And people kept asking me, why am I limping? And I kept telling them that I hurt my leg. I didn't want to tell them that I had I had a hole this big in the sole of my shoe. And I didn't want to tell anybody that, that I had a hole in my shoe. And it was a rubber bottom shoes, and I kept trying to figure out what to do. So I went to McDonald's by the school and I stole, I don't know, probably about 30 or 40 straws from them. Borrowed, stole, took as many straws as I could take because I figured they're plastic. And I went home and melted the plastic to create plastic, melted the straws to create plastic to try to seal up the hole in my shoe. So, I won't get, my foot won't get wet when I walked around because it was raining at that time.
When I was in 8th grade, I attended Yeshiva High School, and I think in the middle of the year, this guy showed up from Israel, didn't speak a lot of English. His name was Yoram, kind of a tall, big kid, long hair, pretty tough kid.
All the kids in school used to make fun of the way I talked. I was a very big kid for my age. For age 14, I was kind of a tall kid. So I used to smack kids around. And I got thrown out of school a few times. A few months later, I found this lady, Zina Lovinger. Today, I can't remember how I met her, but I'm still in touch with her. She's in her 80s today. And I convinced her that I hated yeshiva and I got to go to an American school because I got to learn English. And we speak too much Hebrew in yeshiva. And I came to America because I want to learn English, and she took me to an American school called Brightleaf High School.
I met Chaz in 8th grade. It was, I guess, 1980, and we were in homeroom, and I look over to my right, and there I see this kind of funny foreign-looking fellow. And I just kind of nodded over to him, he nodded over to me, and I introduced myself. I go, hey, I'm Brett, and he goes, I'm Larry. I went, that's interesting. What's your real name? He goes, Yoram. And when he said his name, Yoram, I would say, your arm? He goes, no, Yoram. Your arm? Yoram. Call me Larry. Okay, I'll call you Larry. So how did you pick Larry?
So when I came to America, I figured I needed an American name. So I started making in Israel, you name your pets American name. You call your dog Mike, you call your other dog George. And I always thought the name Jackson was cool, but when I came to America, I figured Jackson is not a good name for somebody like me. And I was here in December of '79, so I was sitting there watching a football game, and I made a list of names, and Larry came about. And I said, oh cool, Larry Lazarian. So till today, some of my oldest friends call me Larry. And then about, I don't know, a year later, don't remember the circumstances, but I remember I was sitting on a curve of a street with a girl next to me and some other people who were just chatting. And she told me, you don't look like a Larry. And I said, what do you mean I don't look like a Larry? She goes, you don't look like a Larry. I said, yeah, I had to pick a name because nobody could say Yoram. They go, yo what, yo who? And she goes, you need some exotic name. And I'm like, what exotic name? She started throwing some names around, and she said Chaz. I'm like, Chaz? What is that? She goes, that's a cool name. I'm like, oh, I like the name.
So as the years went on and we got older, and things, in the 80s, disco was huge, and teen bars were very popular. And the thing about Larry was that he always found his way to be in the right spot at the right time.
He just gravitated towards hanging out, at nightclubs. He was always out, very social.
And I used to be restricted to stay in the DJ booth the whole time because they were serving liquor and I was too young to float around, but the DJ became friends with me and he used to keep me up there with him to work with him all the time.
I wouldn't necessarily go to the teen bar with him, but I would be there and I'd look over and the place would be packed with hundreds of teens, and I'd look over in the DJ booth and who's there? Larry.
He knew everybody at every club. I mean, it was just, you never paid a cover charge because Larry knew everybody.
Through the disco days, that's how he became known as Disco Larry. And back in those days, he'd make mixtapes for people because he was helping DJ. So so Disco Larry would be the king of selling the mixtapes that everybody wanted to buy. And then as time went on, Larry would venture into different businesses.
I used to work with Friedman Shoes on the weekends to help him out because one of the sons of the owner was a very good friend of mine. And while working at Friedman Shoes one time, this guy comes in with a Porsche. And I start talking to him about the car, and he told me that he bought it in Europe. I'm like, what do you mean he bought it in Europe? He goes, yeah, I went to Europe, I bought the car. It's very cheap to buy them there. And 2 months later, I was in Germany buying cars. I went with $6,000 that I borrowed, And I met this other guy from New Jersey at a party, and I told him that, hey, I'm thinking about going to Europe to buy a car. And he told me, you know, I'm thinking about the same thing because somebody else told me about it. And him and I met at the airport in Germany. I mean, again, no cell phones, nothing. He gave me his flight. I gave him my flight. I landed in Munich, Germany, waited for him for several hours. He landed. We had no hotel, we had nothing. We just got in a taxi and went, got a hotel, and started looking for cars. So I started importing cars from Germany. I found a car, didn't have enough money, so I went and got a bunch of change and made a phone call to the US for a friend of mine.
The phone rings at 2:30 in the morning. And I answer the phone, and to my surprise, it's Larry. And he goes, you know, hey man, I have a problem. What's up? He goes, I'm short money on my first car. Now, can you imagine as a freshman in college wiring money to Germany? But he was my best friend. And the next day I went to the bank, never had gone to the bank to wire money overseas before. But I went to the bank, wired him the money, and he brought the car back, and just like clockwork, a month later when he sold it, he paid me back. And one car turned into 3 cars, and 3 cars turned into 5 cars, and eventually he was bringing 6, 7, 8, 9 cars back a month to the States.
I went back to Germany about 3 times, and I bought Ferraris, Porsches, BMWs, and I made a little business out of it.
So we used to go to school in Lamborghini and in a Porsche, and that was a thrill.
I had 6 Porsches, I had a Ferrari, I had a bunch of Mercedes, I had a BMW, and I was a 19-year-old kid living in an apartment complex. And I would wake up in the morning, look outside the window, and go, what car am I going to drive to school today? And I would, you know, drive there, and people in school were scared of me because they thought I was some troublemaker. It was kind of funny to look out your window downstairs and go, I'm going to drive that car today. And while I was messing with cars, we opened up a detail shop in Buckhead so we can clean up the cars. So one day when we started detailing cars, a guy came and pulled in with a limousine, and he told us to do an extra clean, good job because he wanted to sell it. I've never been in a limo in my life, so I asked him, you know, out of curiosity, what does it cost to buy a limo? And he told me $15,000, and I was like, that's it? I figured it would be something crazy. And he goes, yeah, why? And I said, you know, do you mind if I have it looked at? And he's like, sure. So we went and looked at had it checked out, and we ended up buying the limo from him. Again, we borrowed money, and we were right on Roswell Road in Buckhead, so we parked the limo up front. People kept stopping and asking us, what does it cost to rent a limo? And within a month, we went and bought a second limo because we were so busy. So during the day, we were going to school. At afternoon, we were doing car detailing on high-end cars in Buckhead. And then nighttime, we were driving limos. And within 2 months, we had 3 limos.
And his limousine company was called Dynasty. And all of a sudden, he had 1 car, to 2 cars, 3 cars, to 4 cars, to a fleet of cars.
And sometimes he leased them from somebody to get started, and then he started buying his own limousines and stretching cars and doing specialty items like the Mercedes-Benz. That was the first Mercedes-Benz stretched limousine in Atlanta. He used to brag about it all the time.
It's a very cool car.
We had the craziest car. We had a Mercedes limo, we had a Volvo limo. We had cars that nobody else had. And all of us were young guys, you know, dressed up really sharp. And since we had the connections at the nightclubs, we controlled the city. I mean, every show that came to Atlanta, every entertainer that came to Atlanta pretty much used our services.
The limousine business was an entry into everything, social, all the high-end events in town. People would come into town to rent limousines. Sometimes I drove for Tone Loc one time, I remember.
You know, I drove one time. I guess, I don't know why, Grace, what's her name? Grace Jones?
We had a party in a club called Petros that was in Midtown. And they flew Boy George, they flew Grace Jones and some other celebrities. And I actually hung around with Boy George that day. And it was pretty cool. And I asked him, I remember from one of his videos, he had a sweatshirt that was in Hebrew. So I asked him about that, and you know, he told me one of his friends got it for him. And then Grace Jones flew in straight from France, from Paris, to come to the party. And you know, we figured she'll be exhausted, she'll be fine. She kept us out for like 12 straight hours the whole night. She just wanted to keep going out and partying, and it was just crazy. I would go to every club. It was VIP. There were, you know, there was not a place in Atlanta I couldn't go to. People didn't recognize who we were and what we were.
I mean, that's when he and I became much better friends, Georgia State and beyond. And it was kind of going out and being social. And I was sort of his conduit into the Jewish social scene, and he was my conduit into the good-looking, attractive female social scene.
It was crazy. I mean, we were out 4 nights, 5 nights a week out. I'm talking out. Every little event, every little thing that happened in town. And I was in college, I was going to college, and half the time I would drive to college with a limo, park it out there, and in between classes, pick up people from the airport, go do some runs, do whatever it takes to do.
After college, our next business venture, he called me up one day and he says, he goes, "Brett, I want to be in the condom business."
And while I was doing the limos, the AIDS epidemic started, and I got this crazy idea that we should open up a condom store. And I flew to New York because I heard that there may be a store in New York, and I found a store in New York that started the trend per se of having a condom store.
I'll never forget it. It was about 38 degrees and misty rain, and we finally make it our way to the store, and there's not a person on the street, but this one store is packed. It had 50 people in a small store and nobody's out, and it was the condom store. And so we looked at each other, and all we saw were dollar bills.
So I came to Atlanta and I opened one up in Virginia Highland.
And what people don't know to this day is that the area that we picked in the Highlands, now called Ponce Highlands, Larry is the one that named it Ponce Highlands. It was Ponce and Highland. And it was an old Kroger shopping center is what it was.
And it was called Condom Art, because it's almost condom art, but Condom Mart. And it was kind of like a fun store. It was full of art and very exotic looking place, but we were selling all sorts of novelty stuff. It wasn't a dirty store per se. It was fairly clean. We made a lot of fun t-shirts and things, and we were trying to make awareness about the AIDS and what was going on with the AIDS.
Once word got out that a condom store, the first condom store was coming to Atlanta, all of a sudden we were hot news. It was in the newspaper. It was on TV. And not just once, but I would say dozens and dozens of times, because things kept multiplying.
We were featured on the news numerous times. We were actually top story of the news several times because we bought a old mail delivery truck, a Jeep, and we painted it purple and we called it a Condomobile.
The idea was to take it, because we didn't have a store in Buckhead, was to take it through Buckhead and sell condoms and t-shirts and kind of get a fun spin on what we were doing. So I don't know how or why, but a little blurb, 3 sentences. Condomobile comes to Buckhead. Came out on Saturday morning in the Saturday paper. A guy by the name of Sam Massell calls. Now I have no idea who Sam Massell was. So I go, "Sam baby, if you don't like it, you can take my truck when I come by, and I'll come by and I'll stick one of my condoms up your ass." And I hung up on him. So I go down and tell my dad, "This weird thing happened. This guy called me." I called Larry. "You ever heard of this guy?" "Never heard of this guy." My dad said, "Who called you?" "Sam Massell, the old mayor of Atlanta, head of the Buckhead Coalition."
And there was one particular person who used to per se be the mayor of Buckhead, and he didn't like the idea of that we were doing it, so he called us and threatened us. So in turn, we called all the news agencies and told them that we've been threatened by somebody to pull, because they have political power, to pull our permit away.
We were the top story on Channel 2, Channel 5, and Channel 11, in front of a nightclub in Buckhead for the whole world to see, on the 6 o'clock and 11 o'clock news.
There were articles written in the paper, people writing letters to the agency. We were featured on the news a bunch of times with regards to it, and our whole idea was we're trying to educate people, we're trying to do the right thing out there. We're doing a lot of promotion to make people aware of the AIDS awareness and give away free product and trying to educate people, but people didn't like the idea because it was so taboo of what we were doing.
Being the kind of business that it was, you just knew that we were destined for bigger things. And we wound up wholesaling Japanese condoms to Canada and London. We bought a t-shirt company. We had all kinds of things going on. Now, remember, all this time, Disco Larry is going to law school.
And when I opened the store, it was in 1991, I decided I wanted to go to law school. And because I've been thinking about that for a long time, so I started going to law school while I had the store. And it was fun balancing both. I got out of the limo business exactly at that time, got into the condom business and went to law school. And I was 27 years old. I had hair down to my elbows. And people very quickly in school found out what I was doing for a living. So afterwards, I found out there was a bet at the front office that I won last semester. And I came in the middle of school year too. I came in right in the middle of the school year. I didn't start in September. I started in like February.
He was sitting next to me in law school, and he was very proactive at that time with computers. And it was early on. Computers were just coming out. And he was taking all of his notes on a computer. And I was doing it longhand. And I was so impressed with the level of knowledge that he had about the computers and screens, and it was back in the early days.
I ended up finishing the first semesters with honors. And before I know it, I decided, law school is interesting, but I don't want to spend 3 years of my life there. So I accelerated the speed a little bit, and I talked the school into letting me take extra classes. And they asked me if I was working. I said, "You're kidding me? I don't work." And I was working because I had a full-time job and I had a business.
It took very little time in law school when Chaz and I determined A, that he was Jewish, and B, that we would be friends, and you form groups to study with, and it was immediate that he and I would study together.
So in law school, I met a guy that was in his late 30s. I kept trying to understand what he does for a living. He told me he was involved with real estate. He kept talking about an airplane. I never understood what he was talking about, an airplane and real estate. And one day he told me, why don't we study together, come to my house. So he gave me his address, and I went to his house, and I stood outside and I looked, and I was going, this is his house? It was a mansion, it wasn't a house. So I knocked on the door and we opened the door. The first thing that I asked him, what is it that you do for a living? And he told me real estate. So him and I became friends, and we're friends till today, and we've been partners since then. I ended up finishing law school, and I graduated cum laude from law school. And I started in February of '92, and I finished in December of '94. I already graduated in December of '94, so it was a year, 10.5 months. And 3 or 4 months before my graduation, I actually applied to sit for the bar, because back there you could take your bar, right before you finish school. And the bar examiners called my school and they said, well, this guy just started school, how's he applying for the bar already? And they told him, he's got enough credit to be in second year, even though he's in first year, because I was taking an insane amount of classes, and I literally had an exam on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and school would start back on Monday. So I would go like nonstop. It was crazy time to do law school.
And Chaz came into Omni, I'm going to guess around 96 or 97. And we were on an aggressive growth plan, and Chaz's skill as an attorney and a very intuitive real estate investor was perfect for what we were doing, and we were doing real estate loans, and we were doing what was referred to as hard money lending, and he had an expertise in all of that.
He was 31, I think, and I was 23, but to me, he was like a, very, much older, mature businessman. And he was immediately very open to talking to me about business, etc., which was unusual. And it was kind of my first entree into, business.
We may have been, I don't know, 10, 12, $15 million company at the time. And from that point until about 2006, we had grown Omni to about $1 billion company. And Chaz was an integral part of the company because he was such a huge income producer.
Anyone can look at finances, they can look at a deal, they can run spreadsheets. You just have to go to college for a year and you're able to do that. Where I think Chaz is mostly talented is in the psychological way that he looks at deals in terms of the people that are involved.
One of the things that Chaz is he's a rebel, and he likes to do things unconventionally. So I always came around with some crazy ideas until today. Every time I do something, my parents scratch their head with regards to why am I doing it and how I'm doing it. And I can't tell you that everything that I've done was fabulous or great, but it was all an experience in life to get me to where I am today. late in the bank's existence, he went back into the real estate business and left the bank.
Chaz and I are both in real estate, and we both went through a very tough time during the recession. And during those tough times, Chaz, even though he was going through his own stuff, still helped me.
So after the recession, you know, everybody sat around, including me, licking our wounds, wondering what we're going to do next. You know, you're going at 100 miles an hour in left lane. It's not like you moved over to the right lane. You basically got stuck in the left lane with people hitting you from behind as far as headaches, you know, bank failure, losing money, losing everything we had.
Friends are always friends when things are good, but you know, when the shit hits the fan, Chaz was still an exceptional good friend.
He would be the go-to friend. I mean, if I ever had to hide a body, he would have been the guy I called to help me get through it.
Chaz, I needed a ride from the airport a few weeks ago, and it was late at night, and I knew he was tired. He's there because he'll do it, and he'll make a sacrifice. And he knows the importance of friendship.
I think he just loves people. I think he's very open to sharing himself with people and finding out what their stories are, and then, if possible, impacting on that.
I think everything he does today, previously, was doing mostly for himself, like we all do. You know, creating a patterns of success. And but when Etty came, it became about Etty. And when the girls came, it became about Etty and the girls.
You know, the funny thing about Larry was that he always was with the most beautiful girls that you would ever meet. Whenever we went out to Buckhead or wherever we went on vacation, it didn't matter. He always had the knack for being with beautiful women. And he always told me, he said, you know, Brett, they're beautiful, but there's no substance. He goes, I feel in my heart of hearts that my wife is in Israel.
Actually, I had a call from one of our relatives telling me that, you know, he's working with a guy who has a beautiful daughter and I should call her. And I told him, I said, I live in the US, I'm not calling anybody.
It took some cajoling to get Chaz to actually take the step to go to Israel. And I invited Chaz to go on a UJA trip, a mission trip from Federation. And we were going to go and tour the country, and he had never seen it as an American would see Israel. So I said, Chaz, come to Israel and see it like we see it.
While I was at the hotel in Israel, and everybody was jet lagged, I was sitting in the lobby of the hotel after, you know, we ran around as a group the whole day, and I was bored, so I started calling people around and telling my family members that I was there, including this uncle, who told me, you remember the girl I told you about? And I was like, what about her? She goes, let me check if she's still available, because it's been 6 months.
I was working for the Prime Minister of Israel, Ariel Sharon at the time, and my dad had a gift shop, and one of his cousins was shopping with us, with my dad, and he wanted to introduce us. My dad thought it was a good fit. And I was always fighting for excuses, why not to go, and then he called me. He's been calling me for like a week, and then a day before he went back to America, I was in Israel, he came and he called me and he said, you know, I'm right here, let's meet. And it was 10:30 at night and I was just leaving the office.
A couple of nights before I left, I was on my way to go out to Tel Aviv with a couple of my cousins, and I had a friend there from LA, and she called up. It was like 10:30 at night. She's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, we're on the way to Tel Aviv. She goes, I want to come meet you guys.
I came downstairs, he called me, I was in the car, and we were like, you know, half a mile from each other. So I turned around and I drove into a gas station because I had no clothes. I was with my working clothes all day, and I had some makeup in my bag, and I was putting my makeup in a bathroom of a gas station.
So I met her in a parking lot of a restaurant / gas station. And she walked up to me, and the first word out of her mouth was, hi, my name is Etty. Nice to meet you. Let's get one thing straight. I live here, you live there. We're gonna go out and have fun tonight, and that's the end of it. And this was before I even said hello to her, and I was kind of going like, huh?
And it was a lovely evening, and we really enjoyed each other's company, but I didn't think nothing of it. I mean, I would never think that something will come out of this.
Dropped her off back in the car, said goodbye to her, and she asked me, what are you doing tomorrow? I said, what? Shabbat dinner. with my family and I'm leaving Saturday. And she goes, what do you guys eat for Shabbat dinner? I said, Persian food. She's like, I want to go. I was like, sure. Called her the next day and called her the next day, called her the next day, never heard from her. So Saturday on the way to the airport, I called her to say goodbye. And I said, I tried to call you a bunch of times yesterday, and she gave me some excuse. And I said, well, I'm leaving. It was nice meeting you. Thank you, goodbye. And I left, and I went back to the US. And then a few days later, I decided one day to call her just to say hi.
And then he started calling me. And I used to, in the beginning, I answered the phone, but then I was like, what do I have to say? I mean, okay, you live in Atlanta. Where the hell is that? I live in Tel Aviv. No. I mean, I have nothing to say to you. And I was working all the time, and in Israel, it's really hard to make a living. So I was very ambitious. I was working very hard. I had 3 jobs. I was finishing my master's degree. I was very occupied.
Firstly, when he mentioned Eti, he then showed me a photo. And the first thing I thought was, no way, Chazzy. I mean, good luck, but there's no way you land in this. There's just no way. But I didn't, I didn't say anything, but I was concerned that he was enthusiastic and that he might get his heart broken because she was damn hot.
I was at the Prime Minister's office. I was working, this is my day job. And this guy comes with a bouquet of flowers that could barely fit into this room, it's like this big. And he didn't know where I work, he didn't know what department I was, he just knew the building. Everybody knows the Prime Minister building. So this guy comes and he says, I am looking for Eti. Eti in Israel is like John Smith in America. Everybody is Eti. So he's going floor by floor, and this woman comes up to him and says, I'm Eti, but I don't think that's for me. Nobody would ever send me that. And she said, oh, there is a pretty Eti in the finance department. Maybe you want to go up to her. So he comes to me and I'm like, seeing this thing, and I see the card and I'm like, who? Who would send that? I couldn't even recognize the name. And it took me a second, and I figured it out. And I wanted to say and I wanted to call and say thank you, but I didn't. Yeah, that's pretty rude. And then he called me the next day. Did you get the flowers? I said, yeah, I got it. It was really nice. Thank you. Then he started calling me on the phone, and it was like every night. And he was really smart, and there was a lot to talk about. He was really, really smart, and he was charming and flattering and so different than the Israeli guys. He was so much different. And he really wanted to know about me. He asked questions about me. What do I like to do? What do I like to... he knew stuff about me. Who's my favorite artist? Who's my favorite singer? He knew it, and he made a point of getting to know me.
He talked about how she was a little bit different in many ways from other girls that he had met in Israel. And then from then on, everything happened really fast.
After 6 or 7 months of talking on the phone, he sent me an airplane ticket to come to America, and I came. When I came here, we took this amazing trip. We went to Disneyland, and we did all the parks in Disney. We went to Orlando, we went to New York on his private jet. We went on a cruise, on this nice cruise. He took a whole suite for us. I mean, it was really, really nice.
I know Chaz didn't pull nothing. Private jet, Mercedes convertible. I mean, he really pulled no stops on her. So I guess, he saw his future with her, because Chaz doesn't do that. Seriously, doesn't.
We met in January 23rd, and we were on the phone for 7 months. In July, I came here. I came back from my sister's wedding, which was in September. And I came back here in October, 3 weeks later, to live with him. I was here for 3 months, and we were at Shlomi's house.
I had a Super Bowl party in my house, and I think Chaz saw her in a different light over there, and I think that's where he pretty much decided that, she is the one.
And then when Eti came here, we were at a Super Bowl party, and I had helped a lot of my friends immigrate here, as well as getting my wife over here. And I'd been through long processes, and I understood it fully, and I know how difficult it is. And I just happened to mention to Eti, when she brought up the conversation about coming to America, that there is no other way. She needs to get married now.
So we decided to get married in Vegas. We had a quick wedding, lovely wedding in Vegas, and we had a huge wedding in Israel. So I met him in January, and by the end of the year, I was living in the US, married to him. Meeting, I moved in after 10 months, but being literally together for 3 months, and 3 months later we got married.
You always go through life meeting people that impact you in a certain way, and you learn from them. I've learned more from Chaz about commitment to family than I've learned from anybody.
Chaz is the ultimate father. He is definitely by far the ultimate father, and I see what's going on among other fathers, and I see what's going on around us, and nobody does what he does.
There are two things that spark his eyes, talking about the kids and talking about his wife.
He likes to squeeze them and hug them and kiss them and tell them how much he loves them.
He likes to watch with us a movie and stuff and eat popcorn like a popcorn movie, and we turn off the lights in the windows so we make it like a movie theater.
Once he tickled me and I actually peed on his bed, on his side. He said, go get a napkin and clean it, and then he started laughing.
When my dad comes home, we jump on him.
We kind of like do races downstairs, then we jump onto our dad.
And we like jumping on him. And his stomach is like a pillow. I love his big belly. His belly looks like a trampoline. Happy birthday, Ab, I love
you. He's just great. He's the best. I can't think about any better choice for my kids than Chaz. He's absolutely the ultimate father.
Some people measure accomplishments with money, some people make accomplishment by recognition, some people, set up different milestones. Yes, I've learned a lot. I got a vast experience in my head. I've done things that most people would, like the army, like we do more before 9 a.m. I've done more by the time I was 30 than most people will dream doing in a lifetime. I've traveled, I've done a lot of fun stuff, The next goal in life is just to pass a legacy to my kids, to make sure that my kids grow up good people and continue to do the right thing for themselves and everybody else. And next thing is to start taking care of me health-wise, and to make sure that I'm staying around long enough for my kids to see them.
I still see us together. I see us happy together. The girls will be much older. Maybe Noah will be married. Maybe Ella too. Maybe some grandchildren running around. We will always be together. I mean, we're very, very united. We love each other so much. There is no way we will not be together. I look forward for our future together. I'm sure it will be lovely.